Hey, it's Anthony Whitaker here, and welcome to today's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast. And whether this is your first time or perhaps you are a regular listener, either way, it's great to have you here today. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you find this episode inspiring, then please make sure that you hit the like or thumbs up button. It's a small thing that you can do that goes a long way for me. And if you do like this type of content, then let me know in the comments below the video and make sure that you hit the like button. So with that said, on with today's show. Now, my guest today is Gerard Scarpaci, co-founder of Hairbrained and host of the Hairbrained Conversations podcast. And in today's podcast, we're going to discuss the changes that Gerard sees happening in the industry, the changes in how today's generation of stylists learn, and the role of live events, and so much more. So Gerard, it's fantastic to have you here. It's been a long time since we've caught up and had a chat, so I'm really looking forward to the next 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, me too. We always have great conversations and have a lot of respect for what you do in our industry.
Oh, cool. Likewise. I mean, you and I have actually had very similar career paths. You know, we both sort of worked at Sassoon for a considerable amount of time. We then left. We both opened up salons and then, sold them, moved on. And now we're both in podcasting. So very similar career paths. So, yeah. Right. Well, look, let's jump in here. So what I want to start off with was you get to talk to and meet a lot of people in the industry at different levels, whether they're salon owners or stylists or, editorial hairdressers or product manufacturers. So first question I want to ask you is, what is it that you see in the industry today that really excites you?
I think possibility of what could be. I think, we had a very solid and successful way of business models and how things functioned for a pretty long time. And I think a lot of that's gotten flipped on its head in the past few years. And I think that's a good thing. I think, it creates a possibility for things to be different and better. Also possibility for things to be worse, if the right people don't make the right changes at the right times. But I think that there's more possibility now than ever. And I think, we've heard this probably for at least a decade, that whole world of gatekeeping the gates have crumbled. So, someone with the right piece of content and the right skill and savvy and message can go from, technically nowhere to have a large voice in the industry almost overnight.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that a lot. I mean, that's mainly through social media, which was good. It was a good game changer that it wasn't, restricted to a few players at the top that had done their years, so to speak, to build up the reputation. All of a sudden, you can get new people coming in overnight. And I think that's been nothing but good.
Even in launching a business or, I can remember, I opened my first salon in the year 2000 in New York. And I mean, even just to process credit cards, it wasn't like I didn't just hit a button and all of a sudden I could accept credit cards. I had to go through some hoops and meet with people. So most people were pretty shady and I didn't know. I'd never processed credit cards before. Is 3%, is that a right amount? Should there be 25 cents per swipe? Is that fair? Or is someone robbing me? Or now, I mean, or to, you want to sell some widgets online, you can open a Shopify store tomorrow in 5 minutes. So I think, it's not just social media. It's just the ability to become an entrepreneur now is the barriers are gone.
Yeah. It's funny when you're just talking about the credit card, I instantly thought of the machine that you had to get out.
Oh yeah.
you
had to have the thing to slide it.
All that. Yeah. I mean, people listening to this, younger people would go, "What the hell are they talking about?" Yeah. Anyway,
but that's not that long ago. I mean, 20 years. It's not that long in the scan of time.
Yeah. And where will we be in another 20 years? Well, we're going to talk about that as well. But okay, so there's no one thing that necessarily excites you. It's more just the opportunities that there are now. That technology, I suppose, in a word, has sort of opened up all these different ways of looking at the world. Let me flip that question on its head then and say, what are your concerns about the way the industry is evolving? Because like when you and I started in the industry, it was a lot more the employee-employer based business model. There was a lot of training responsibility within the salon. There was a different relationship between manufacturers and salons, which we'll talk more about as we go. So, and now we have, obviously a lot more social media. We have a lot more independence in the industry all over the world, not just in the US. So what are your concerns about how you see the industry evolving?
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, as you said. I mean, that not everyone necessarily has the fiber to be an entrepreneur. And it sounds great to be your own boss and I can start a Shopify tomorrow, but I see people and I hear from people, they're spinning their wheels for years because they don't have direction. And I think, as you pointed out, for people like me and you at younger ages, we were able to have mentors and direction. And I didn't start out at 19. I knew at 19 or 20 or 25 even that I wasn't qualified to be my own boss, so to speak. I had a lot to learn. So I think it's a double-edged sword where it is easy to go into all these things and doesn't necessarily make an easy path for people. So it can be a huge challenge to just think, hey, I'm going to make I see a lot of people, as I said, spinning their wheels. They have a lot of ideas, and even though it's easier than ever to get them out there because they haven't seen any kind of a blueprint of how to do it, they kind of spin their wheels. So I think there's a lot of failure. It's a lot more people taking chances because it's easier and a lot more people failing. And then, how do they deal with that failure? Again, having worked for organizations where things work, things don't work. When they don't work, how do they fix them? How do they move on from them? As opposed to you're by yourself and you put it all on the line and you fail and that's it. It's the end. So I think, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Do you notice, do you have any sort of insight into any data, any factual data as to what the churn is in the industry these days? Because as you've just said, there's a lot of people that go through beauty school, they graduate, and a lot of them want to go straight into being a suite operator, a solo operator straight away, and having their own business and sort of, I'm an entrepreneur. And as you say, a lot of them very quickly, realize that it's not quite as simple as that, and there's a failure rate. Do you have any idea to what that failure rate is, and where do they go?
I don't, and I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure anyone, at least that I've heard recently, has an exact number on it. I think there's a lot of different industry reports. I believe that it's fairly high, is what I've heard, and I think it's more anecdotal than anything. But I still hear in the U.S. that upwards of 50% of people that get licensed aren't practicing after 5 years.
Yeah.
But again, I don't have any hard and fast data on that one because any surveys that we send out are usually going to people who are still practicing. So the ones that aren't practicing anymore, we don't get much response from them.
Yeah. Of course. Okay. I checked out your website again. Over the years, obviously, I've visited it more than once.
Yeah.
And there'd been some changes since I was last there. And I was really interested in picking up on some of those things with you. I really liked the thing you had that you call the Hairbrained Confidence Index. I don't know how long that's been going, but tell us what that's all about, because I was intrigued by it. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, Confidence Index has been running, it ran all of 2025. It's a quarterly survey that we send out to our database, and it relates back to the Wall Street Journal Confidence Index of kind of small business owners. It's something that's been around for a long time. And where it came from was, myself attending a lot of industry events, hearing a lot of quantitative data, and not really getting the message behind why. We would hear the average retail has gone up or it's gone down. It's always gone down. But, the dollar per service stays here, et cetera, et cetera. And I was always just thinking, well, where's the why behind it? Is it just up to everyone here? Like, what is happening to hairdressers that's affecting these numbers, the, kind of qualitative data. So working with someone on our team who had some history doing that in the corporate world, we launched this to, and in the Wall Street Journal, it asks the same, 4 to 6 questions every quarter. What's your current job satisfaction? Is it staying the same, getting worse, getting better? How do you predict your income will be in the next quarter? Do you plan to invest in your business? So it asks these simple questions. And then we also have an addendum every quarter. Last year we did like one about education, one about tariffs, which was, kind of scary in a lot of ways, scary for the whole planet, and a few other timely things. So the idea is to kind of take the temperature on the emotional side of how our respondents are feeling, and then kind of extrapolate that into, hey, this is how hairdressers are feeling, so that's why their performance, right? You have to take a little bit of a leap, which I'm not afraid to do, that if you understand how someone feels, it'll help you understand why their performance is either going up or down,
Yeah. Okay. All right. So is it the same group of hairdressers you ask the questions to every time?
It varies. We target the same group, but again, you can't guarantee response from people every single time.
Yeah.
But we definitely, and we're working on broadening that as well. I mean, we have a large database, but it's surveys in general. Certain people answer them. So I always have to say none of this is scientific. And I've never felt that any of the numbers I see in this industry is scientific. You know what I mean? It's just not a scientific industry. And when people even report on numbers, it just depends on who's presenting it and what message they want to get out there. But being right off the bat saying it's not scientific, it's emotional, and on our team we have enough experience in the hair world that right away I can say, oh, that doesn't sound right, or that does sound right in terms of how people feel about things. But again, not scientific, purely it's the opposite. It's emotional.
Yeah, no, I thought it was good. I really thought it was good. I enjoyed it.
I mean, it gets compiled in a very scientific way because of Tony Davino on our team. So it's presented and compiled in a way. But I think the root of it is just about, when you ask someone how they're feeling, it's qualitative, not quantitative.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I think it's very related to how hairdressers are. They're a lot more about the feeling side of it than what the numbers are telling them necessarily. So I thought that was a really good sort of meeting of the two. But I understand what you mean about trying to get good data in this industry has always been difficult. I'd like to think it's getting better and easier now. I know particularly in the US, there's been a lot of great data being put together with the Kim report, and different people have been working on stuff to try and get some real numbers to substantiate things, because it's the old thing, numbers are facts, not feelings, so to speak. And but as the industry constantly is evolving and shifting so quickly, it's hard to get, like you say, reliable data. I know you've got a big database. I saw somewhere, I think it was on your website, that you've got something like 3 million people
across social media, in terms of followers and fans. Yeah. Okay. I mean, we don't, we with stuff like the confidence index, we send that out to our mailing list, which is not 3 million.
Yeah, of course.
But, it's in the hundreds of thousands. And then we have certain partners that we collaborate with, and they send it out to their mailing lists as well. And then we also do, we will put it on social, like in a story on Instagram where people can click through. So it's got a big enough reach. But again, typically you're not getting hundreds of thousands of responses to something like this. You're getting over the course of a year, more like thousands of responses.
Yeah. Well, that's enough to get to take the temperature.
I think it is. I mean, I'll be honest, and people will get angry, the data people out there. I think if you find one right person who really has their finger on the pulse of the industry, they can answer all these questions, the emotional ones anyway. And if you found just a couple of salon owners, you could probably answer all the questions too. I don't necessarily know that hundreds of thousands of answers are better than, that just comes from my experience working with certain brands that would pay these real companies that do surveys and report data to do things. And I could look at it as a hairdresser and go, well, that's not right, because they don't know the difference between an academy and a hair show. I specifically, one company I work for wanted to do some surveys and get some data about advanced education. And, having spent my whole life in it, I was like, I could have answered this better, so having more answers wasn't better than having, someone who knew the answers.
Yeah, I get that. But one of the challenges is always, I think with any of the research that goes on from the hairdressing industry, is it starts with, well, define a hairdresser. Do you know what I mean? Like, so is it the barber in Arkansas is a hairdresser. The big salon with 50 staff in, Fifth Avenue or whatever is a hairdresser. Yeah. But they're very different beasts. So trying to compare, a color salon, an extension specialist, a spa, there's so many different things, regional, metropolitan, and they're all hairdressers, but often the research is sort of focused on a specific sort of group of them that very clearly applies to that group. But if you look at the industry as a whole, then sometimes it gives you a very sort of skewed message.
100%.
But yeah. Okay. So, like me, you're lucky in that you get to see a lot of great salons. You get to meet a lot of, very successful people in the industry. What do you see that the most successful salons are doing today? How have they adapted to the changes that weren't there 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago when we started out?
I think based on, personal observation plus what was called out in the confidence index, and I'll kind of go back a little bit here. I think there's this assumption that creative people or artists, we're so lucky because we get to do a job that we love. And I've heard that my whole life, but anyone that does it will tell you sometimes you don't feel so lucky. Your body hurts. You have constant challenges to income because someone, just because she had a busy week doesn't mean the next week's going to be busy. People aren't guaranteed to come in when you need them to come in. There's a lot of stress and pressure that happens for hairdressers. So just because you love being creative, working with your hands, being a hairdresser does not guarantee job satisfaction. So that's one of the questions that we ask on the confidence index is, rate your job satisfaction. And over the course of 2025, if you were to combine people who say their job satisfaction has stayed the same or gone down over the course of the year, it's about 65% of the people that we surveyed. Now, I don't think anything stays the same. So I think if someone says it stays the same, that means it's gone down. So, the way I look at it is that it's 65% of the people we surveyed, and we can extrapolate that to our whole community of hairdressers, is not satisfied with their job. So what I'm getting at here is I think that both hairdressers, even independent hairdressers, people like Van Council, who I think are one of the best salon owners I've ever met.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that they all do is they are conscious of job satisfaction. And they look at what it's going to take on both the individual level and the team level to foster job satisfaction within those hairdressers. And when they do the things that it takes to create job satisfaction, they see performance increase. So I would say, if you want to sell more retail, what are we doing, job satisfaction wise for that person's, because to me, one of the things that, having worked behind the chair and done 50 clients a week for many years, back to back to back at a high level, charging a lot of money, one of the things that would go out the window right away would be retail, because I didn't have the time. The pressure was there. So, I took a little extra time on a haircut because I wanted it to sit a certain way. What's the first thing I'm going to get rid of? Well, I don't have time to walk up front and say, Anthony, here's the wax that I used on you. You can remember, put it in your fingertip. The things that we know increase retail. We know it still works. If you do that with every client and then say, hey, Anthony, this haircut's going to grow in well, but in, 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to need another one. It's the holidays. I'm super busy. Let's get you rescheduled right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are the first two things that I don't do. And again, so what I'm getting at is, pressure. So great salon owners and even great independents for themselves, they think about how do I release the pressure so I can perform and have job satisfaction at the same time. And I just find ultimately that leads to better retail sales, better rebooking, asking, having time to say, hey, if you love this haircut, please, tell your friends. Like all these things that we know work. I mean, those three things I just said there, if you did that with every client, walk them up to the front, talked about retail, asked them to reschedule, and reminded them that you're taking new clients, you'll make more money, and so will the salon. But those go out the window because of time and pressure, like immediately.
Yeah, or sometimes I'll defend that because you're very much on my turf when you talk about all that stuff, which I know you know. It's about what you do with your time. It's like, I'm cutting your hair. I got two choices. I can tell you what I'm using and why I'm using it and how to use it, sort of thing, as just part of the conversation. Or I can talk about the football. And a lot of times people will go, I'm going to talk about the football. And then the bit that doesn't get done is actually the important bit. So it's all that, it's finding that balance all the time, isn't it?
Sure.
Between, it's like, I weren't going to talk about this, but when you talk about retail, I just did a podcast about retail last week. It's forever, all of my entire career, it's been a sort of bone of contention about, about clients and hairdressers, and I'm not a salesman, I'm an artist and all that stuff. Does my head in because, ultimately, when you talk about retail, it's just so simple to me. I should recommend retail to you because I care about you and I care about your hair. Not because I'm getting a commission or because I've got a target. It's like, I like Gerard and I've made his hair look great and I want him to make it look great next week. So because you care about someone, you should talk about it. That doesn't make it the words you use were perfect. They're the sort of words I use. It's not some big sales pitch, is it? You know what I mean? It's just I always use the expression, be who you are, just better. Like, just talk to Gerard about this product like you'd talk to your brother or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's like that they often put this pressure on themselves to become someone that they're not. And it's not about selling. It's about educating and stuff. You know what I mean? So
yeah, right there you mentioned, so when we look at job satisfaction and we kind of break it down and we look at the things that go into it, we found that there's 3 areas as an leader of yourself or others that you can work on to increase job satisfaction. Number one, as we know in our industry, is learning. Do people have the skills that they need, and have they been exposed to the things they need to be, like what you just said? Now, again, back to what we said earlier, if someone never had a mentor like Anthony or whatever and heard what you just said, because there are people who've never heard that. They've never even heard that, don't talk about the football, talk about this. They've never been exposed to it. So like the learning piece that sometimes we take for granted, that could be eroding a little bit because there isn't that mentorship, especially on soft skills.
Exactly.
There are people that are going more independent that maybe they are still taking technical classes. They might not be taking the ones that we used to think that they should take, but they're still putting their dollars into technical education. But, so that soft skill stuff, as you said, it can be hard to fill those classes for a lot of reasons. And, what we found, we also had a lot of open-ended questions. So a lot of what we heard about learning was that's changed is the people want it to be relevant and timely. These were words that kept coming up. And I think, it's interesting, we especially, we're always going to go back to the Sassoon thing. Like I was on a path or a track that was determined when I needed to learn what I needed to learn. And you're in week 6 of your training or year 2 or whatever it might be, a career path, where that's changed a bit now, where a lot of the individual wants to determine when they want to learn something so it's relevant and timely to them. And, they've been trained that way since they've been in grade school. Here's a device, go find a video on YouTube that will teach you what you want to learn when you want to learn it. So finding the balance between, we have to have a structured education path that you are on to making the learner feel like it's timely and relevant for them. Otherwise what was it? One of the other panelists, something recently said, we went from seeing like 700 ads a day to 7,000 ads a day.
Yeah.
So people are so distracted that if something's not timely and relevant, how are they going to focus on it?
Yeah.
So there's the learning piece. Like, how do we create that? Then there's the pressure piece, and pressure comes in a lot of different ways, and it's an individual thing. Like I said, all my clients are late. I don't know how to handle that. I have financial challenges. I don't know how to balance my checkbook. So even though I'm busy, and then there's the energy piece, the physical well-being of, doing a physical job. One of the things that I noticed early in my career, after I left Sassoon for the first time, I worked in a salon that had a spa. I'd never seen that. It wasn't part of our culture. And the massage therapist there, I always noticed after a client, they would be like in the break room having some chamomile tea and like unwinding. And I would be like, I'm trying to drink a coffee really quick to get enough energy to do my next client. And I started to think, and I remember talking to them. They said, it's very physical what we do. And I thought to myself, well, it's pretty physical what I do too, plus I have to have a conversation, which most massage therapists don't, because it's kind of quiet. So the physical energy level, so I know the original question. So I find the salon owners and the individuals who manage themselves that are, succeeding are looking at these things in terms of job satisfaction and saying, hey, I'm supposed to love what I do. Let's make sure I love what I do and I can perform at the highest level in terms of what's my learning, how do I deal with the pressures, and how do I channel and control my energy.
Yeah, I was really interested in what you just were saying then, because, again, it goes back to sort of learning anything, whether it's, I don't know, doing jujitsu or, Tai Chi or doing a haircut or, taking a photograph or whatever it is. There's a degree of, hey, you start here. Like, this is how you start. This is the fundamentals. This is the principles of what this is based on, no matter what you're then talking about, cooking, hairdressing, photography, jiu-jitsu. And that thing you were talking about, timeliness, that people go, well, hang on, I want to start there. It's like, well, hang on, you can't start there yet because you're not ready. It's like I always remember a friend of mine. She went to a cordon bleu cookery school in France years ago. This would be 25, 30 years ago. I remember her telling me that they spent 3 days learning how to boil an egg. And I thought, oh my God, I could teach you how to boil an egg. It's going to take me 3 minutes tops. I wouldn't be able to talk about it for longer than 3 minutes. And then if we bring that back into hairdressing, I mean, we can have this conversation because we both know exactly what we're talking about with the training that we went through, albeit I was in London, you were in New York. The success of Sassoon as an organization, here we are 70 years later, is all about having really strong fundamentals. Because when you've got those fundamentals, again, let's just segue off into cooking or jiu-jitsu or playing the guitar. When you've mastered the scales, when you've mastered the fundamentals, then, hey, break all the rules you want. Go and do whatever you want because you have this understanding of what's going on at a deeper level. Whereas if we talk about the hairdressing component and someone goes, I don't want to do all that. I want to go straight to there. It's like, okay, listen, that's, this is not going to end well because you need to learn certain things to get you to that point so that you can do it properly. What are your thoughts about what I've just said?
Well, I think 100% agree, but I think the challenge that we have to address is how we market that, how we package it, because, I'll again, I'll give an example. Like I keep referring, I was in Serious Business. I was one of the panelists, and I had made a pact with Edwin Neal from the Neal Corporation that we both wear ties on the panel, right? But I don't wear ties very often. But I knew about this for weeks. And I thought, oh, I really should remember how to, because I wanted like a double Windsor. I wanted it to look really nice. And, now here I am. I've had weeks to review and practice. And I knew I needed to get my fundamentals down. But I didn't do anything about it because of just human nature. So, timely and relevant, I'm getting dressed an hour before the presentation. What do? I go, well, I better jump on YouTube to find a timely and relevant, video.
Yeah.
And then which video do I select? The one that's got the most views, so that, again, there's the human nature problem, which we're always going to have. And we used to be able to, because people were different and they were exposed in different ways, we'd say, no, you're wrong. And this was my generation, because I wanted to, do all kinds of crazy stuff when I was an assistant at Sassoon in the early 90s. But I had enough respect for traditional authority that someone could tell me, no, you're wrong. You have to do this, where I just don't think that works the same way anymore. So it's not that it's the wrong answer. It's still the right answer, but it's how do we repackage it? Like, how do we put it there so that when they're like, I want to hit the button now, and I'm about to, do my first true one length bob, and I want to make sure I get no graduation on my line. It's a complicated one, but what timely and relevant means, like, they've learned, the younger generations and even older generations like myself, they've learned, I need the information when I need it. I don't need it when you say I need it. And that's the hard balance. It doesn't mean the information should change. Learning a one length bob without any graduation, cut on the skin with a scissor, to me, should come way before you ever try to texturize or work with a razor or anything like that, because it just turns into a clusterfuck. But like, how do we present that? It's the marketing, the packaging of the message.
I really like that timely and relevant thing. So thanks for that. Okay, let's switch it up a little bit. I know that on your podcast, which I regularly listen to, that you often will talk to people in product companies, which is great. And I've brought this up with different people over the last year. As the industry's evolved in terms of a lot more independence, etc., the relationship that existed or exists between the salon owner and the manufacturer has started to change as well. And that's for lots of different reasons. The internet, Amazon, different channels to market. There's so many different things that are playing into that. And so I'm interested to find out, when you talk to people that are running major companies, particularly in the US, what does that look like to you? How does that shift in that relationship between the salon owner and the manufacturer? What do you see? Like, where's that going?
It's a huge question. And, I will say genuinely that the majority of the dozens, if not, hundreds of brand people that I've dealt with in the past decade plus are genuinely in awe of hairdressers and our industry and the potential. And most of them come to it thinking, wow, we've got a great product. Let's just put that aside. We've put all this research into it and it's an amazing product. We put it on the shelves somewhere and hope people discover it. Okay, that's one way of doing business. Or we have a trusted expert who, as we said, spends time with someone who respects them. And wow, what a great, this sounds like the perfect way to sell things and to build. I really do find that they still, for the most part, believe that and see that. Then, because of the things that I was saying earlier, as an industry, we've underperformed on our end. And some people will get mad at me. I'm not judging. I'm just saying what I've seen historically.
Yeah, of course.
And then these people have to go, wow, we put a lot of our, pennies or whatever you want to call it in this barrel. And, then whatever happens in the business world, they sell, they have stock. What are we going to do? We have to keep driving up profitability. We genuinely were in awe over here, but it didn't pay off the way that we hoped. So that was like the traditional thing that I saw. Then things came along where, okay, you could kind of still do this, but maybe do it using social media. So, now you could find the era of the influencer, you know. And to be honest, I don't know that there were any hairdresser influencers, or at least pro hairdresser influencers, that blew the doors off selling product. I mean, compared to like a Kim Kardashian or something like that,
Yeah.
you know. So that it worked, but it wasn't tremendously successful where, let's find a bunch of people that have a couple 100,000 followers and see if we can make more profit. It, didn't always work. So you've got these people whose job it is to sell and drive profit, and they're always looking for something new. So it just kind of goes like in a circle. I mean, I think what I've discovered, and what most of the people that I work with discover is this omni-channel concept.
Yeah.
That it's very difficult now to just be, we're going to be pro only, and it's very difficult to just be launched on social media, and it's very difficult to just be in retail outlets. So it seems like everything's going to that omni-channel, and it kind of feeds everything in a circle or a cycle. So I guess that would be the biggest conclusion I found, is that, we have to figure out as an industry where we fit into that. I don't think it's going away. I mean, I think that, listen, there are smaller brands that pop up and they don't have the resources to be omni-channel. So it just makes sense to be pro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It costs less for them, to be completely honest with you. And then usually they kind of try to use some of those pros to have some of the social and digital. And then maybe if they have enough success, then they go omni-channel.
Okay. There's a direct sort of link to that question. And the next question I wanted to ask you about, which was the education component, because the manufacturers have always been, they've sunk a lot of money into the education side of the industry. And I have different figures about, how much that has now gone in reverse since COVID, that there's a lot less of that. And I always think that's a shame, because that's a detriment to the industry, to the hairdressers out there to not have that support. But then having said that, it's interesting that it's opened up other channels. So again, other educators, i.e. Hairbrained, i.e. me, who, we both sort of stepped into sort of filling a gap that maybe was always provided by manufacturers before. But in this day and age with social media and the internet, to some degree, I mean, it's good if you've got manufacturers, because they, can leverage the size of their audience. But to some degree, you maybe don't need them as much. Now, you're interesting because you've got both live education, and you've got the online space, and you've got your own retail stuff that you do. How do you sort of see that playing out? Is online growing? Has online education sort of peaked in some areas? I know you're doing a lot of live stuff around the US on a regular basis. What's the feeling that you're getting as to the direction that's going in nowadays?
So, just going back 5 years to COVID, which seems like, decades ago, to be completely honest with you. But, the move was towards subscription-based education. It just seemed like the way everything was going to go. People had automatically had to start learning online because they couldn't get together. And, everyone started creating libraries, brands, independents, people like Hairbrained. And, for a very scalable cost, I think ours comes in at like something like $9 a month. You could sell subscriptions to people, and it had its moment, and it kind of seemed to be going up, and then it just kind of seemed to be going down. And I don't have enough data, but I can see the industry. I can see that, independents, brands, whatever, they're not all out there promoting, hey, sign up for my subscription anymore. So I could, I'll extrapolate. I use that word a lot, I guess, and hopefully I use it properly. I don't know. I should consult the dictionary. Yeah, it sounds good. I could conclude that, everyone had the same experience that we had at Hairbrained. It kind of went up, it plateaued, it went down, and now it's just kind of where it is in terms of subscription online education. That led us, quickly to think about, well, maybe people want to get, we also heard it from people. People want to get back together live.
Yeah.
So, it's something, doing live events, especially for hundreds of people, is not easy. And it takes a lot of investment, a lot of time, a lot of marketing to get them there. But we just one day woke up and I just said, screw it. Let's throw it into the wind and see what happens. And of course, did the biggest thing you could do, a 3-day event in Palm Springs at a luxury resort. It's called HB Fest. It happens every September. This will be our 3rd year. And, it's a 500 plus person attendee event over multiple days with a main stage, breakout rooms, parties, all that kind of stuff. So thank God for a line of credit, to help you kind of manage something like that. And thank God that people responded and bought tickets so that we could pay our line of credit back in a timely way.
Yeah.
But, that helped us realize, okay, people want this, they want something different. So then we started launching 1-day events called HB Sessions across the country in cities that we thought maybe were underserved for education. We just did one in Scottsdale, in late January. We had over 400 people attend the 1-day event in Scottsdale. And these are, this isn't like a giveaway. This is a $300 plus ticket. So again, I don't want anyone thinking, wow, look at all hopefully we broke even. We haven't calculated yet the amount of money that goes into doing something like that.
I know. Yeah,
but I think back to the brand, so what this is stuck in my head, and I don't know, maybe you remember this, somewhere in my Sassoon days, I remember reading about Vidal's first trip to America, that he was brought in by Clairol. There was this tour that he did for Clairol. I thought, well, Vidal didn't work for Clairol. I'm sure he wasn't like their perfect spokesperson, but they knew that Vidal had something. Whoever made that decision, I don't know, and I'm making this up, but I knew that Clairol brought him here. They knew that he was timely and relevant, and they knew that he could get the people in, and they knew that that gave them an opportunity to meet those people and hopefully get leads. And I don't know that they used that language back then. And
sure.
Yeah. So we went through this huge period there, as you said, the brands then own the education. And you couldn't, again, with gatekeeping, whether you like it or not, you couldn't get on stage for Paul Mitchell unless you were Robert Cromeans. And I love Robert. He's one of my best. I have nothing but respect. I've learned so much from him. But it was very much controlled in that way. This is our brand. These are our educators. This is what we do.
Yeah, sure.
Where I think we've kind of come back to now this Clairol, powered by Clairol, but who's the person that people want to see? And the brand doesn't necessarily always have those people. So what we've been able to do at a lot of these events is be powered by a group of brands that want access to A and B level hairdressers. And they haven't been able to get them to turn up for their events. And they're spending all this money. People aren't buying the tickets. They're giving them away or giving points. Maybe that works on their balance sheet. Maybe it doesn't. Well, then they're like, wait, for this low investment, you're telling me you're going to have 400 A and B level hairdressers. I don't have to foot the bill for the whole thing. I just have to be part of it, contributing member, a sponsor, and I'm going to get quality time with them. And, your educators who are on stage can use my product if they choose to. We found a lot of brands are interested in that, because it's a leads generator. It's a very, it pushes someone right into the warm category from being totally cold. And then if they turn up the way some brands do, this is the feedback we've gotten, because they're like, can we come to the next one? That's how you know it's working. They were able to convert some of those people because they've come in warm and boom, they actually had a good salesperson there. They had a good representation in the vendor area. And I think, that's been the breakdown that we've seen, what the traditional trade show wasn't really doing that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, very interesting. Look, I know we've got to wrap up in a minute, but I did want to just ask you one thing. And that was, if you were a 25-year-old, and I know you're not a 25-year-old anymore, if you were a 25-year-old today and you're just starting out in the industry, what would you see as the opportunities in the industry today? Because it's a very different industry to, when you started in the 90s or when I started, even before that. What would you say the opportunities are? What would excite you?
Okay, again, I'll always say getting good at your craft. Let's put that aside. I still believe getting good at your craft is the first thing you need to be excited about.
Yeah.
And whatever's timely and relevant for you and whatever part of the craft you want to go into. But then, if you've put enough time into that where you are good at it, it doesn't mean you're the master of all things. I think content creation is the biggest opportunity. In many ways. So being able to use a phone and edit something, whether it be, predominantly video in short form, that you can promote your services, grow your brand, market yourself, find people that like what you're doing. And then eventually from there, if you get really good at it and you really have the credibility of your skill and credibility as a content creator who can put something out there that gets reach and engagement and views, you can now take that and all those brands that I was talking about that want those connections will work with you. So, and along those lines, again, we're putting our money where our mouth is with something called CreatorCon, which is going to be happening at the end of February, beginning of March here in California. This is an intimate event for 150 attendees that will get to learn from some of the best, most successful creators in the industry: Alfredo Lewis, Jacob Kahn, Lisa G, myself, Krista Bartik. I can go on. We have all these other panelists, but it's not a technical hair event whatsoever. It's going to be about filming, editing, content creation, branding, the templates that you use, the choice of music, panel discussions, keynotes, and again, from the level of, hey, I want to make sure that I am the most successful hairdresser in my city. Content creation, again, you got your skill. I don't think this means I'm a horrible hairdresser, but I'm good at content creation, so I'm the most successful hairdresser in my city. I don't even want to see that happen. I want to see that fail. I want to see someone who's good at what they do and is invested in their ability, and then can use content creation to become the highest paid hairdresser in their community. And then if they choose to, can also have brand partnerships and launch their own brands if they want. I think the next Vidal Sassoon, the next Horace, the next Paul Mitchell is going to be a content creator that really captures the imagination of not only the pros, but the consumers.
Okay, that is the perfect place to start to wrap up. And I love everything you just said there. Whereabouts, Gerard, can people connect with you on Instagram or other social channels? Where would you like them to send them?
Hairbrained_official is obviously the Hairbrained page. I don't see every message that comes in there, but my personal is my name, Gerard Scarpaci, on Instagram. That would be the best. I do see every message that comes in. So if you want to say hello, it's Gerard, Gerard. I'm sure it'll be in the notes here. Scarpaci on Instagram.
Yeah, good. Okay. All right. Well, look, I'll put those links on our website, growmysalonbusiness.com, and in the show notes for wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if you're listening to this podcast with Gerard and you've enjoyed it as much as I have, then do me a favor and share it with people who would also enjoy it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcast app. So to wrap up, Gerard, thank you so much for being on this week's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast. We're going to have to do this again. I've got a whole lot of stuff I didn't get to with you. But
anytime. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Everything you were talking about was great. Yeah, cool.